Right, welcome along to a brand new show here on the Fight Game YouTube channel. I'm David Lovell, joined by my esteemed guest, the one and only Mr. Justin Knipper. We're here to do a show called Excellence, focusing on our favourite wrestler of all time. And I'm sure many of you out there are just like us and have many memories of watching Bret Hart over the years. So hopefully this show will bring back some memories for you. We're actually going to start with the 1993 King of the Ring, because we just passed a 28-year anniversary. Can you believe it's been 28 years, Justin?
Wow, that makes me feel quite old. 28 years, wow, because I remember it relatively clearly. I mean, it was not a big time for wrestling in the States at that time, but for me personally, I remember that, and I loved Bret Hart around that time too. And this King of the Ring idea wasn't. We were just talking right before we started recording about how Bret Hart actually won King of the Ring 1991, but that wasn't on television. That was a house show, like a glorified house show. Not glorified, like a pumped up house show, you know, and he beat IRS in the finals of whatever that was. But this idea of King of the Ring is really big part of the 90s when I think of WWF wrestling. And I think of Bret Hart, especially with that video game King of the Ring too. He's right on the cover with a crown and cape and everything. Kind of iconic, kind of an iconic look that is burned into my head.
So yeah, obviously we're going to try and look at events from Hitman history, if you like. And this event was the, I think, 13th of June, 1993. So it was the anniversary this past Sunday, actually, of the event. And just to give folks some sort of context, Bret had been the champion. He won it from Ric Flair at a show in Saskatoon in October of 92 and dropped it to Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9. Now, everyone will remember that Yokozuna didn't leave WrestleMania 9 as a champion. Somebody else left that night as the champion. And that's kind of like after all these years, it's still kind of a little bit of a sticky point for me, the fact that Hogan won the belt. I mean, how do you feel about that, Justin?
Well, I mean, it definitely feels, as purely fans, it's definitely, as a fan of Bret Hart, taints the moment, because it wasn't the best match in the world. I think the WrestleMania 10 match they had
was much better.
Much better. A couple months, I guess a year later. Yeah. It was different. And so I think WrestleMania 10 made up for what happened at WrestleMania 9 for me as a fan. It was just kind of like, I remember hearing, I didn't watch the pay-per-view, but I remember hearing about it. I think it was like a Monday Night Raw or sometime that week, and I remember they would show still shots. And I saw a picture of Hogan after he'd won the belt. He had a black eye. And as a kid, I just totally didn't get that. But I'm like, you just said Bret Hart won. That was what happened. So yeah, it is kind of, for Bret Hart fans, it's a sore spot or something. I don't know. It just didn't feel like a part of the entire tapestry of Bret Hart's narrative.
And as far as Bret was concerned, I think I'm right in saying he thought that it was going to be him and Hogan at Summerslam of that year. And he remembers them doing promotional pictures at the time. It was him and Hogan with like a tug of war with the championship. And Hogan and Vince have conveniently forgotten all about this, by the way, apparently. But Bret vividly remembers this happening. And I've no reason to question Bret. I mean, most of the things he said over the years have been fairly accurate. I mean, he kept a pretty substantial, sort of record of his career over the years, obviously with the dictaphone and everything for his book, which I think is one of the most comprehensive autobiographies you can probably read of a wrestler. But did you ever hear about that, the whole promotional stuff of Hogan that Bret remembers doing, and Vince and Hogan, like I say, seem to forget all about it?
Well, I read in the book that you mentioned, I read most of what I learned about this situation in Bret's book. The promotional stuff with the tug of war, I don't recall hearing about that, but I mean, I don't have any reason to not believe it, because it seemed like there was something that was supposed to be in the works for 93 to kind of smoothly transition from Hogan, who was planning to get into TV and movies and such, and move it on to Bret Hart. But things got weird. And there was also the steroid trial that was happening around then too. So I don't know how much that factored into Hogan's mindset. I'm sure it did, and I'm sure he wasn't happy. Him and Vince weren't on great terms around then, I don't think either. So including that plus whatever type of, I guess, ego-driven stuff, ego-driven politics between Hart and Hogan, I'm sure that factored into this situation too. Unfortunately, I don't really think it did anything for the fans other than the fans that were at the arenas or at WrestleMania 9, because it makes sense, because Hulk Hogan would lose the title again at this King of the Ring that we're talking about that Bret won. So in a way, I guess that's the closest Bret Hart ever came to beating Hulk Hogan in a match, was he won the King of the Ring card while Hogan lost the title on the card. That was the compromise.
It was pretty clear that Bret, even though he was no longer the champion, he was definitely the guy. And how much do you think going into this event, how big of a chip do you think he had on his shoulder, and how much do you think that he looked at this event as a chance to really prove to everyone that, look, I am the guy. It's no longer Hogan, it's me.
I think there was definitely a chip on his shoulder, or a drive in Bret Hart believing in himself as a singles wrestler, because while he was always great, we always knew he was great in Hart Foundation throughout the 80s. If you're a hardcore fan and you were a fan of Calgary Stampede, he was a star there too, but he's much younger. It was different. Around this time, I think it was clear that with a little bit of the help of the machine behind him from WWF, he was determined to have great matches with whomever he was in the ring with. And during this time from 93, I think 93 is a great starting point to see, I guess, the real golden era of Bret Hart in the ring from 93 till about his retirement. Not retirement, but let's just say it's like 97, just the rest of his WWF
let's
run.
not focus too much on WCW.
Yeah, there are some gems in that, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but that's a much different story. The story changes a lot from there. So we'll stay in the 90s today. But 93 with Bret Hart, he could wrestle so many different kinds of wrestlers too, and have different styles of stories and matches, like King of the Ring. He wrestled 3, well, I guess you could call them Hall of Fame or legendary types of wrestlers: Mr. Perfect, Razor Ramon, and Bam Bam Bigelow. They're all very different. And Bret Hart had great matches, in my opinion, with all of them that night. And it was real proof that Bret Hart is going to show, I'm going to be the best wrestler in this company, and it's not going to be like Hulk Hogan. I'm going to do it my way. That I get that vibe. I get that atmosphere when I watch his matches. I absorb that when I see that on the TV.
Well, let's talk about the 3 matches then, because the first one was against Razor Ramon, and he'd worked with him previously at the Royal Rumble that year. He defended the title against Razor on that show. And I mean, Scott Hall, if you were to rank the members of the Clique in order of their sort of work rate, obviously Shawn would be number 1 on pretty much everyone's list. But number 2, I mean, probably would be Scott Hall, wouldn't it? Or would you put, I mean, obviously Sean Waltman was great as well, and Triple H is great, and Kevin Nash was a big guy. But I mean, would you go with Scott Hall as number 2 on that list?
I think that's fair to say. I mean, Sean Waltman has a very different background compared to the rest of the people that were in the NWO. I don't think I couldn't see Scott Hall or Hulk Hogan in the top of the Super Juniors tournament. So he has that sort of experience on the other guys that he's in the Clique with. But on the other hand, if we don't want to compare it with that, it has to be Scott Hall, because I don't think he gets all of the credit he might deserve as just a pro wrestler in the ring. Not talking about his skills on the microphone or creativity or anything, just talking about pro wrestling. When he had the right partner in the ring with him, he could be pretty damn good. And he was a very big guy who didn't really wrestle like a big guy, especially back then. A Diesel, Kevin Nash was a great example of this is how the big guy wrestles in today's age. And while Scott Hall wasn't that much smaller than him. He was a big dude, but he wrestled in a way where, I mean, he could move, he could do a lot of different kinds of matches, cool things, and things that worked in that time. And I think this match, although I don't know how I rate this match against his Royal Rumble match with Bret. How would you rate it, David?
I would say the Royal Rumble, the Royal Rumble one was slightly better than this. I think. I mean, he took a lot of this match. I seem to recall. I think Bret did a lot of selling. I seem to remember in this match, and I think the Royal Rumble one, they had more time at the Royal Rumble as well. I think this one went like 10 minutes, something like that.
Something like that. The stakes were higher. It was, a title match. The setting was ready to go at the Royal Rumble. So, yeah.
And plus, he was going to go 18 with Kurt and then another 18 with Bam Bam as well. Right. So, I mean, I think that maybe has something to do with the match maybe not being as long as, because, I mean, he had to, I mean, when you think about it, this performance has to rank as one of the best performances of his career. 3 very different matches against 3 very different opponents. And the way he was able to do that, I think, did Kurt do that on one of the King of the Rings, I want to say, the year that he won it? Or was it just 2 matches? So I think I want to say that he had a one. Is that the year he wrestled Shane, or was that the following year?
Well, I'm not sure.
I think that may have been the following year, but I'm sure there was one year where he did 3 matches like Bret did. 3 very different matches. But yeah, no, this was just an incredible performance from Bret. And I would say the Royal Rumble match, though, was probably slightly better, but this was still good.
So, like, when we're talking about it now, I think about it and I think maybe this just wasn't meant to be the great match because he had to have other great matches later in the night. Exactly, so I think it was set up to be good, but we can't blame Scott Hall. Can't blame Razor Ramon. It's just he did what he was supposed to do, and it served the purpose of really pumping Bret up on this night. But the match that I really want to talk about with you is the next match, because while this Razor Ramon match was good, his match with Mr. Perfect is arguably one of the best WWF matches of the 90s.
Do you think it was better than the SummerSlam 91 match?
That's a good question. I think so. Personally,
I think it was on par, certainly. Yeah.
It definitely, the 91 match was a great story and an awesome finish. And it was the first time we saw a glimpse of, Bret Hart is more than just a tag team wrestler. Yeah, and there was a title, and I think it was Madison Square Garden, 91 as well. That was in New York City.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
And this is a Providence, Rhode Island. It's a very different setting. So you could tell how kind of small this arena was, too. It wasn't a very big arena. It was more like a mid-size place. But technically speaking, I mean, this match is pretty ageless. You could put this on, you could put it on against anything that's on television today or any international product, anything. It's equally as good, and it's one of those matches you can put on all the time and it doesn't feel old or dated, or you can always watch it.
I think the SummerSlam 91 match as well, what was going against that, if anything, was Kurt's back at the time, because, I mean, obviously that was his last match for, I think, over a year. And I think he came back. I don't know what his first match back was. The first big one I remember was when he wrestled Flair in the Loser Leaves.
I was going to say, yeah.
The Loser Leaves Town match, yeah. Which he actually won, because that was Rick's sort of last big match with the company. But, yeah, I mean, Kurt Hennig, Bret's on record as saying that's his favorite opponent, even more so than Owen. He loved working with Kurt. I mean, they never had a bad match. I think he mentions one they had in Alaska, which there's no footage, I don't think, of it that exists, but that apparently was maybe his favorite match he ever had with him. But yeah, Kurt Hennig was just a perfect wrestler in many ways, to use that cliche. But yeah, I think he was just a perfect opponent for Bret.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways they're perfect complements for each other. Bret has black hair, Perfect has blonde hair. One is perfect, one is excellent. They're very much, there's a lot in common. They're not the same, but there's a lot in common. And I think they're both sons of, established famous wrestlers, are coming from wrestling families. So in a lot of ways, they're kind of perfect for each other. And I think if you have the Peacock network, or if you're interested in any other matches between these two, if you want to go out and the house show matches that you can find on the network or YouTube or what, everything that they've done together is really good and worth watching. Any era too.
Because the Hall of Fame speech, Bret said that he looked at working with Kurt Hennig as a night off. He didn't look at it as work. It was so natural being in the ring there with him. And obviously the final match against Bam Bam, I mean, Bam Bam, I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame, but he should be. I mean, he's one of the best big men of all time. I mean, would you put him in the same category as guys like Vader and Yokozuna?
I would, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've heard Bret Hart say that in interviews too, that he thinks Bam Bam Bigelow was the greatest big man in pro wrestling, and he felt like working with him was not a night off, but it was light. It wasn't like working with Big Van Vader or something. Yeah. This match, I guess for the time, I mean, again, it's another timeless match, like the perfect match, but like you were saying, Bam Bam was doing things that I had never seen wrestlers do, but he was doing things that you couldn't fathom a big man like that could do. And he could also, hang in there and make Bret Hart look really great too. And I'll always remember the bulldog spot, the flying bulldog spot in this match. We're not talking about Will Ospreay and Shingo Takagi from last month. It's not wild and crazy, but I'll always remember it for some reason.
Yeah, it's a shame because when you think of great opponents that Bret had, Bam Bam probably wouldn't be on many people's list, unfortunately. And this is probably the most well-known match they had together. I mean, they have worked more matches though, haven't they? I mean, I think when I had you on my podcast, you brought up one that you had seen. Just remind me of that match again.
Was that maybe a year ago? I think I spoke to you on the podcast, and I can't really remember exactly when it was because it could have been like some house show match. But
I think it was a house show match, yeah.
Yeah, it was probably some kind of house show match from somewhere. You can find a lot of these great long, like extended play matches on YouTube channels of like bootlegs from Europe, like the European tours or the Japanese tours. Not the official the footage, but if you can find these full matches, like a match between Bam Bam and Bret Hart that you would never see on WWF television because it would go 15 minutes or more, and it was in the vein of the King of the Ring match. Of course, it's different setting, different situation, different crowds, but it's probably safe to say that if you type in Bret Hart Bam Bam Bigelow anywhere, whatever you pull up will probably be good. Yeah, and same goes for Mr. Perfect too. Like I was saying, there's so much more out there that we're probably not familiar with from the house show circuits, especially with Bret Hart, because that guy was just nonstop, always working in the ring, always on the camera, in our heads. So, yeah, Bret Hart and Bam Bam, that was a special match, the finals. And am I missing anything from this match? I'm trying to think what else happened during this match that
Well, there's an infamous story, isn't there, about the finish of the match, which I don't know if it's true or not. Do you know what I'm referring to with that?
I don't think so. Enlighten me. What's up? What happened?
I want to say someone let one go. I want to say it may have been Bret, but I don't know. That was just a famous story from that match.
That makes this match even more legendary.
The Hart farts were just legendary, apparently.
Wow. He truly is the king of the ring.
He must be. But of course, he was attacked by the real king in many people's eyes at the end of this match, which is perhaps the most famous thing from this King of the Ring was the post-match where Jerry Lawler made his debut with the company. And they would then go on to have a feud that went on for probably really until Bret left in 97, really. It was an on-off sort of thing. But apparently when Jerry was on commentary and he would used to make fun of Helen and Stu, they loved it. They loved being part of the show whenever Jerry would poke fun at them. So, but yeah, how did you find the whole Jerry Lawler feud? Did you enjoy that over the years?
I loved them so much. I think they're underrated as well. I think it's some of Bret Hart's best best wrestling, best work. I mean, it's not only like the wrestling is fine, but okay, we're talking today about Bret Hart versus Bam Bam, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. Those matches are, if you like professional wrestling, you want to learn about the craft or how it works, or just, let it wash over you while you watch greatness, you can do that with those. On the other hand, with Jerry the King Lawler, you're getting the other side of what's great about professional wrestling, where it's just a fight between one guy that really, really doesn't like the other guy. And this other guy, Jerry the King Lawler, boy, I mean, it was funny. It was hard not to laugh at these cracks that he make about the Hart family, but something about he was like a wrestling's version of like a cleaned up Don Rickles ripping on the Hart family. Bobby Heenan was also great, but Jerry King Lawler made it really special and really personal, and it also, the whole aesthetic of him being the king, Jerry the King Lawler, kind of, and that image of him and the Bret wearing the crown as well. Yeah, it worked. I think they're two different kinds of compliments for each other. When we were talking about Mr. Perfect earlier and Bret Hart, on the other hand, Jerry the King Lawler is the perfect American foil for the Canadian Hitman, I think. And it's funny because Jerry Lawler was arguably one of the best baby faces in pro wrestling history. And he turned the switch completely, and he was so amazingly unlikable in the best of ways, in the best of pro wrestling ways. And it all ended, I don't know, I think it was at SummerSlam that year or the next year, the Kiss My Foot match.
Yeah, was that SummerSlam of that year? Or
I think it was. It was.
I thought for some reason that, well, we can look it up, but I thought Bret worked Doink the Clown on that.
That's
SummerSlam.
right. Yeah, Jerry Lawler was involved somehow, but yeah, it was Doink the Clown. It might have been the 94. Wait, no, 94 was Isaac Yankem.
Yeah, did they even do it at SummerSlam? Was it?
It might have been the next.
We're gonna have to look this up, aren't we, and find out?
I think it might have. Was it the King of the Ring the next year that Owen
may
won?
have been King of the Ring '94, which Owen obviously won.
Mm-hmm. So there was still that, and which was kind of a part of this story that blossomed at the King of the Ring the year before between Jerry and Bret. It was kind of like you were saying, it was a long drawn out program that wasn't always paid off with a match. It would be paid off in other people, like Owen Hart becoming King of the Ring the next year did have that overall effect on Bret's storylines and Jerry the King Lawler storylines, as he would talk about it, and later Owen's.
And of course, SummerSlam '94, he had the steel cage match with Owen. But when Owen won the King of the Ring, obviously, and also in other years as well, that was kind of a launching pad to go on to be in the title mix at SummerSlam. That didn't happen for Bret because obviously there was a whole Lex Express, and Lex Luger would challenge Yokozuna at SummerSlam, and the famous count-out victory that he celebrated like he just won the title. But how much do you think the Royal Rumble '94 was a test to see, because of course they both went over the top at the same time? Do you think they'd already made up their minds that Bret was going to be the guy, or did they sort of use that as a sort of litmus test to see who the fans wanted?
I think the litmus test is what I would imagine what they were trying to figure out. I mean, after losing Hogan, after the steroid trial stigma that wrestling had gotten around that time, I think WWE was desperately looking for a new star, a new Hogan. And I understood why they wanted to try to make Lex Luger into that next Hulk Hogan, because he did have a little bit of that feeling to him before. When he coming in WCW, he was one of their top guys right before he came to the WWF. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but I believe that Royal Rumble took place in the same arena as King of the Ring '93 did in Rhode Island. I could be wrong, but I believe it's the same arena.
Could well be. Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I don't know if that, maybe that was, if that factored in at all. I don't know. I've never heard of WWF running Rhode Island, huge shows in Rhode Island so close together ever. Rhode Island is a very small state. Sorry if there's any, I'm not trying to diminish the Rhode Islanders out there.
Well, no.
I love Providence. I love that famous mall they have there. Providence is great. But I don't know how the fans there factored into the decisions to go with Lex Luger or try to go with Lex Luger, because by the time, like you said, the 94 Rumble came up, it seemed like, okay, after the Rumble, we're going to go with Bret Hart. This is the situation, it seems like. And at that time, that was also, they're building the Owen and Bret feud around that time too. So Bret had a lot of stuff going on, 93, 94. Even outside of title pictures, he had the Hart Brother program, the Jerry the King Lawler program, whomever they threw at him for titles. So, and King of the Ring 93 was that kind of starting point. You can really see it start to unfold.
Yeah, because Survivor Series 93 was originally going to be the Hart brothers against Jerry Lawler's Knights.
Mm-hmm.
But there was allegations at the time, which we won't go into, but Jerry Lawler wasn't on that show and was replaced by Shawn Michaels, I believe. And that's where the Bret Owen feud started, because I think I'm right in saying Owen was the only Hart brother to get eliminated in that match. I think that's right. I might be wrong.
It might have been maybe Smith Hart. I think maybe Smith or Bruce might have been eliminated, but I don't think they were a big factor in the match overall. Now, this match, in terms of the Hart family being made fun of on commentary, is just outstanding. Some of the best work of Bobby Heenan's career. Also, I remember the host of Family Feud. I don't know if you're familiar with this American television show, The Family Feud, but he was on commentary in this match as well, which added another strange element to it.
But anyway, that's pretty much all the stuff from King of the Ring and sort of what happened afterwards. But the one last thing I wanted to touch on is obviously WrestleMania 10. He wrestled 2 matches. I just wondered how you felt those 2 matches compared to the 3 that he had at King of the Ring 93. Obviously, the one with Owen, which I have to say holds up more than the ladder match, because obviously there's always been this debate, which is a better match. Was it Bret and Owen or was it Shawn and Razor? And I think at the time, people probably said Shawn and Razor more, but now I think Bret and Owen holds up better than the Shawn and Razor match.
Personally, I would agree with that. I've always loved that match between Owen and Bret. I think because the ladder match was so fresh and exciting and innovative, even though it wasn't the first ever ladder match, it was the first ladder match on a grand scale. And geez, I mean, WWF, I remember seeing that clip of Shawn Michaels jumping off the ladder doing the splash onto Razor Ramon. I've seen that a billion times. So I think there's that part of it too. That ladder match was special in that it normalized ladder matches. Whereas, now we'll probably see a ladder match a couple times a month. It's not as special. So, and those matches in the ring, the guys and girls that are doing ladder matches now, they're doing stuff that I'm sure Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels couldn't fathom yet because it hadn't been done yet. So I think that's one of the reasons why it makes that match so special. And it is a great match itself. But as we're all more educated, we all have access to YouTube and OTT services. We can watch and study all kinds of older wrestling, and we can see that this match that you mentioned, WrestleMania 10, Owen and Bret, is pretty close to flawless. And again, it's another timeless match. You can watch it now, and it doesn't look out of fashion. It doesn't look out of date. It's just great. It's excellent, if I do say so.
And obviously, as we said earlier, the Yokozuna match was probably better than the WrestleMania 9 match that they had. And everyone remembers the post-match with everyone coming out and hoisting Bret up on their shoulders. I think it was Burt Reynolds was in the ring at one point,
like
and
yeah.
They had obviously Randy Savage and Tatanka and all the baby faces of the time. And that image at the end of Owen just taking a few steps up the aisle, everyone's encouraging him to come along, come and celebrate with your brother Owen, and Owen just stood there shaking his head, saying no.
That was the greatness of Owen. That was the subtle little clips of him when he would be doing that, and he would know when the camera would come to him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure Owen Hart probably deserves his own show too. But
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
now, before we leave, I want to ask you this: that you brought up the Yokozuna match. Now, let's compare the Yokozuna match at WrestleMania 10. How would you compare that to his match against Bam Bam Bigelow at King of the Ring 93? Two matches with Bret versus big men, but they're quite
Right.
different.
They are very different, aren't they? Yeah, but I mean, Yokozuna, like you said with Bam Bam, Yokozuna could do stuff that someone his size just simply shouldn't be able to do. And
Yokozuna is
yeah,
maybe the only comparable peer, I guess, to Bam Bam Bigelow. And they're not that comparable, but even still, they're both big guys who, like you said, could do things you wouldn't expect. And with
yeah,
ease.
because I think obviously Vader did stuff, that no one would expect him to be able to do either. But Vader always felt more, how can I put this? He always looked
Brutal.
lighter than the other two, if that makes any sense.
Like, in what way? In like how he carries his body?
Yeah, how he sort of carried himself. I mean, obviously he was legitimately, I think, over 400 pounds at that point in his career, but he just didn't seem to look it. Whereas Bam Bam and Yoko, I don't know if you really see what I'm coming at with that, but
I could see that. I mean, that makes sense because we know that Vader has a serious athletic background. He played for the LA Rams before he started wrestling. Whereas I don't think Bam Bam Bigelow nor Yokozuna had a specific athletic background. They had pro wrestling backgrounds. And so I think their bodies just developed differently. They're not very tall guys. I think they were pretty relatively average height for males. They were just bigger dudes. So I think that might be why. I think Vader has different kind of athleticism. He has an athleticism that you would compare now to somebody like Keith Lee, who's huge but just moves in a way like I'm much smaller, but I can't move like that at all. You know what I mean? So when you see somebody so much bigger and do it so much more seamlessly, it's amazing. And when you see it, when it's somebody like Bam Bam Bigelow or Yokozuna, who's less of a natural athlete and they're still doing it, that's even more amazing.
Absolutely. We could talk a lot more, and we will. We hope to do more of these. And like I say, try and focus on events from Hitman history so we can tie it into this week in history. And I thought the King of the Ring 93 would be a good starting point. So I think it worked quite well.
Yeah. And there'll be plenty of topics to cover in the future. So
we're never going to run out, are we? I mean,
that's okay.
I'm sure we'll cover some of the WCW stuff because, as you said, there are some bright spots among that period of time. I mean, obviously, everyone talks about the was it in Edmonton with the steel plate?
Oh, the Goldberg.
The Goldberg angle. Yeah, was that in Edmonton?
Because wasn't he wearing an Oilers?
I believe he was.
Hockey jersey. Yeah. That was cool. I was thinking because we were talking about Mr. Perfect earlier, Kurt Hennig, and I don't think they had any matches together while they were in WCW because Hennig was wrestling around that time again, but I don't think they were ever paired up again.
I can't remember them ever having a match in WCW. Now, there were so many missed opportunities in WCW, guys that Bret should have worked with and didn't.
Yeah, and Hennig had some pretty decent matches. I remember he had a pretty decent match with Ric Flair at a pay-per-view on WCW back around that time. But I don't know if Hart and Hennig ever crossed paths in that last WCW run. That'll be something we probably focus on in the future, just his WCW highs and lows.
Yeah, probably more lows and highs. But yeah, there were some highs. There were some highs, to be fair. Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Justin, for joining me. And like I say, we'll be back and we'll be playing more of these. So hope everyone out there enjoyed it.
Thanks, David. We'll see you guys next time.